with the Presencing Institute. She has been the co-founder and managing editor of a new journal that's in its second year, the Journal of Awareness-Based Systems Change, a very innovative, trans and multidisciplinary open access journal that provides creative scholarship platform, bringing first and second person lenses to a field of systems thinking and systems change. Eva has also been a full-time faculty member in the Department of Applied Human Sciences in various periods of time. And from 2017 to 2020, she held the role of social innovator in residence at Concordia. She's currently an affiliate faculty member in the Department of Applied Human Sciences. And I'll just read this piece that she put together that might give you a broader sense of her background. Her work with participative processes integrates systems thinking, participative action research, contemplative practices, community engagement, and transformative learning. Her action research focuses on the cultivation of the social field, which you're going to hear a lot about tonight, as a key leverage point for individual and collective transformation. So she lives in Montreal, which I'm very happy about, with her husband and two sons, Isaac and Sam. Isaac being 15 and Sam being 12, going on who knows what. But anyway, without further ado, Eva Pomeroy, if we'd all welcome her into our space, and floor is yours, Eva.
Thank you so much, Jim. And hello, everyone. It is so good to be here with you all. As Jim said, I work for the Presencing Institute as the research lead and a faculty member on ULAB, it's a very global organization, even though my 2 feet are planted, like many of yours, here in Tiohtià:ke and Ginhagen land. And my history is also here. Just as Jim said, I'm an alumni faculty member and an affiliate faculty of the Department of Applied Human Science. So coming here tonight for me it feels very much like coming home, and it feels really lovely. For me, it's been the length of the pandemic, I think, since I've really been in contact with the community. So I couldn't be happier about being here tonight, and to share with you and work with you around a concept and a body of work that really I'm passionate about, the social field. That's going to be the focus of our work today. And the social field is one of the key concepts in a sort of new domain, a new field that at the Presencing Institute we call awareness-based systems change. So systems change, much as so many of you would expect it to be, where the intention of the work, regardless of whether it's working with an individual or group or an organization or a community, the intention is about collective change, right? So shifting systems so that they serve the well-being of all their members, the well-being of the ecosystem of which they're a part, and the well-being of the planet. So that's the kind of underlying intention of the work. And the awareness-based piece is about the foundational belief that to really cultivate change that's sustainable and that's transformative, you need to change consciousness, change awareness, right? Change the place from which we operate, both as individuals and as collectives. And so that's the kind of broader context that the social field fits into, and it's the social field that we're going to work with. And maybe the best way to kind of move into that, actually, first of all, how many people, I know there are a few folks with their cameras on, have heard of the term social field in your work, in your reading? So a couple folks, okay. Yes, I thought. And how many people might talk about their work as, you know, I work with the social field, or I work at the level of the social field, or that's where, yeah, so there are a few folks there. and some social, okay. I think you might, and after this you might say, oh, I absolutely work with the social field. So to move into it, just in terms of the social field as a concept, it's useful to compare it to the social system. So whereas the social system is something that we tend to view sort of from the outside, from a bit of distance, we can look at it, we can map it out, we can see, observe some of its dynamics and design interventions around those dynamics. The social field embraces that, but also sort of steps into that social collective and moves into that experience of being, right? Of being the system, embodying the system. So the social field is really about a way of being in organizations that we help to shape with our own behaviors and our thinking, but also shapes us, right? So there's this interdependent relationship between this thing we're calling the social field and the individuals that make it up. And so maybe as a first definition, so I will, okay. Initial definition to start with, this comes from Otto Scharmer, the founder of Theory U, which is the body of work upon which the Presencing Institute is based. And he says that the term social field eliminates the interiority of the social system. So it's about looking at these systems both from the outside, the third person, and from inside, both the first and the second person perspective. And it investigates the interior conditions under which social systems can shift from one way of being, if you like, to another. And so social fields have a quality, right? They have sort of a personality. We may not always be aware of it, but it definitely impacts our behavior. And we can also build our capacity to become aware of the quality of the social field. And so to begin to think a little bit about that, I want to introduce the idea that the quality of the social field, even though each one will be distinct, can be more generative or more degenerative. And I'd like to share with you just two small vignettes that might help to illustrate the kind of material that we're talking about and working with today. The first is an experience I had earlier in the year in the fall, as I was out walking my dog in the neighborhood. And I walked alongside a daycare that had a very long external yard. And as I walked along the external play area, I was able to observe a number of different things happening. So there were some children who were running around playing together. There were some who were sitting on their own playing in sandboxes and things. There was an educator and a child throwing a ball to one another, two other educators sort of chatting easily in the space. Some of the children were more on the edges watching. And as I walked along this space, I thought, what does this kind of social space feel like? And the words I would have used to describe would have been words like comfortable, ease, contentment. And I wouldn't have, it's not that I would attribute any of those adjectives to particular individuals or even to particular interactions, but instead it's like that was the quality of the air in the space. And as I walked past, I began to feel that quality seep into me. And I think because I'm often thinking about the social field, as I walk by, I thought, oh, there's a lovely social field at that daycare. And it also then brought to mind a very different quality of a field, a different experience from much longer ago, an experience from when I was a young woman working in a European ski resort for the winter. And that social field had a very different feel. It was a field that I would say was characterized by divisions. So divisions between, a social divide between the people who were coming for holiday and the people working. social divide between the owners of the businesses and the workers, and a social divide between those workers who had come from countries with political and economic upheaval. So were there basically because they had been driven to leave their countries to be able to earn a living, and workers who had come from countries not experiencing upheaval and who were there more for, an experience or to learn a language. So there's a lot of division throughout, in different layers of division. And I would describe the qualities of that space as guarded, a little bit antagonistic, and perhaps the kind of undercurrent of fear. And I felt those not only in the space, but I felt them in myself. And so hopefully those vignettes have evoked for you some of your own experiences of the social field. We live in social fields, we are social fields. So the experience is there. And of course, in our work, right, all of the work that would bring a community together around the Department of Applied Human Science, we're really looking at trying to shift social fields, support them to become more generative. So as a way to move into this and to get to know each other a little, we're going to move into a short conversation in breakout rooms where I would invite you to introduce yourself, share where you are and what brought you here, but also to share perhaps a moment where this idea of a generative social field speaks to you, a moment where you feel like possibly or definitely you found yourself in a generative social field. We'll have groups of 3 or 4 and 8 minutes for this breakout. So if you have 4 people, about 2 minutes each, and otherwise just under 3. And so if you can share the time so that everybody has a chance to share, that would be great. And then we'll come back together 8 minutes from now. Welcome back from your small groups. Before we move on with some of the material about the social field, it'd be really nice to hear maybe 2 or 3 voices from the experience of being together and speaking about the social field. And people could either share in the chat, but it would be great if someone wants to unmute and just share a little bit about, while you were meeting people, sharing these stories, what were some of the things that you were noticing, either about yourself or about that small group or about the stories themselves?
I can speak briefly if you'd like.
Yes, please. Is that Eleanor?
Yes, and I apologize. My camera is not working. I was trying it with Donna, who was my teammate. And I also have a baby in my hands, which is distracting. So that's why I'm transitioning between spaces myself. But Donna and I were just talking. I was telling her I was on maternity leave with a young one. And she was we were discussing the difference between a home space or a space with children and maybe mothers and fathers and young children, let's say a school or a daycare, and maybe our more professional spaces with clients or in a corporate office, let's say, and just how we change ourselves in those spaces as you're discussing the very real experience of being one person in a social space. And not only what it looks like, but how we change. So we discussed that quite a bit and how the difference is so noticeable, even in our daily life, from work to family.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I think we'll talk a lot more about that too, around is culture changing, can culture change, and what's the impact of that. So we'll leave that for now. Thank you so much. Be great if there's someone else who wants to share a little bit about your conversation and what you're noticing about self, the conversation itself, or the stories.
I noticed in our group, we all shared stories where it's almost magical, almost Walt Disney-ish. It's like, I'm not sure what exactly went right, but something definitely went right because it just felt so good. It felt so different than what we consider normal life and the way people normally interact. So magic is the word for me.
Thank you. It's funny for me, the thing that sticks out in what you said is, we're not sure what happened. And I feel like that's our work of the moment. What happened? How can we make more of that? Thank you. Is there one more comment before we move on. Connor, I think, has a, yeah, hi.
Hey everyone. We in my group we discussed how there's kind of, as humans, we all have this sort of intuitive sense that a social field exists, and then kind of pointed out that it feels like very important and benevolent work to be labeling it and thus kind of quantifying it and therefore being able to kind of begin to, I suppose, monitor the health of social fields. And yeah, so I feel grateful to be here for those reasons. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think giving it some, well, we have to be able to see it, give it some language, and name it so that it's taken seriously, and we can put some energy into kind of cultivating it. So, all right, thank you. Those are beautiful comments, as well as in the chat. So I want to maybe take a step back or not, but to share a little bit about sort of my moving into this area of work. I really became interested in this whole concept of the social field when I took ULAB as a participant in 2015. And my fascination was more because I couldn't quite grasp it. It would come up in the vocabulary of ULAB and in the vocabulary of Theory U, but I couldn't find something that was really satisfying my need to kind of understand this phenomenon. So, I have an academic leaning. I went to the literature. And one of the things that I found really useful for helping to understand the social field was some of the links that are made to the natural sciences, particularly the work around electromagnetic fields. The fact that you can take two objects, right, two magnets, put them in a field, and without one touching the other, they will have an impact on one another. They'll be drawn together or pushed apart. And so the theory that arose from this was that there is a field, that when the magnets are put in the field, it changes the quality of the field, that then has an impact on the behavior of those magnets. And that concept was picked up by social scientists to try and explain some of our collective behavior and our collective experience. In particular, Pierre Bourdieu from sociology really picked up the term and evolved it, and Kurt Lewin from psychology. So Bourdieu, as a sociologist, he's just very much that third-person perspective, looking at the world and figuring out, trying to kind of theorize around why things are the way they are, why people behave the way they do, and was particularly interested in power, how we exercise power, gain power, leverage power. And so his perspective on the social field, if I go back to the slides, was very much that sort of outsider view, looking at the social field as a force field, as well as a field of struggles, a lot of emphasis on the power dynamic. Kurt Lewin, of course, coming from psychology, was really interested in motivation, right? So that layer underneath the visible behavior, what's happening there. And he used the field concept to describe all the different forces around a person that will either push them towards certain behavior or away from it, draw them toward, repel them, called that the life space of the individual. And he said that all behavior, acting, thinking, wishing, striving, valuing, achieving, can be thought of as some change in the field at a particular moment. So it started with the individual and then moved on to apply that thinking to collectives, to groups. This then influenced a number of organizational development scholars who also draw on the field, particularly from Lewin's thinking about it. And what's really interesting about these sort of early theorists around the social field is that they had to kind of assume the existence of the field, right, by its results, by its visible impact, because they couldn't get in there and see it and measure it. And so James Martin, a sociologist who did a really comprehensive study of field theory, said that common to the early field theorists is their faith in the underlying connections, right? They really believed in the phenomenon of the social field as evidenced by its results. But they also sort of implicitly believed that it wasn't knowable because you couldn't see it and you couldn't measure it. So where awareness-based systems change is trying to kind of move this work forward is with the idea that yes, we can come to know the field, right? But to do so, two things have to happen. We have to conceptualize it differently, and we've got to draw on different ways of knowing. Yes, knowing through our, drawing in from our senses and cognitively making sense of what we experience, but also drawing on the knowing of our bodies, the knowing of the heart, the relational knowing, intuitive knowing, and so pulling from a more sort of holistic set of epistemologies. And in awareness-based systems change, we talk about this as sensing. So I think often in systems thinking, you will hear people talking about how important it is for the system to see itself, absolutely essential. We talk about the importance of the system seeing and sensing itself. And sensing involves opening all of what we talk about as our organs of perception, all of the ways that we come to know the world to help inform our understanding of the social field. And so I want to go into an individual exercise that really starts to move into this concept of sensing. And we're going to start with just a moment of stillness and grounding to move into it. So if you can just make yourselves comfortable, if you have pen and paper, you can put it to the side for a moment. If you are comfortable, you can close your eyes. Otherwise, you can just sort of have a soft gaze in front of you. And in this moment, just draw attention to your breath. Inhale. Exhale. Perhaps deepen your breath with the next inhale and exhale. Make contact with your physical being. Feel your feet on the ground. Connecting you to the earth. Let your awareness sort of scan up your legs to your sitting bones. Maybe feel your back, strong back, solid. Feel your front, softer. Bring your awareness up into your head, perhaps reaching upward from the top of your head. Come down around the front, your face, your jaw, really releasing any tension that might need to be released, really feeling your physical self. Then moving your awareness more to that sort of heart space, connecting to your feeling self. Just noticing its quality. And moving down toward your stomach area. Many traditions, that's the energy, the center, your grounding. In other traditions, it's the seat of creativity, just sensing into that space within you. And then with the next few breaths, just holding your awareness of yourself, physical, feeling self in this space, in this time. And from that place of presence, I invite you to bring to mind a system that's important to you. This could be your organization, could be a client system, your community or your family. So just bring to mind a system that's important to you. And take a moment to sense this system. What that means is to bring to your awareness, your experience of being in the system and of being the system. It's about feeling it more than thinking about it. You might draw on specific events or interactions just to help you move into your felt sense of the system. But try to feel the whole, including sensing yourself within it. And as you do that, notice maybe what words or phrases, images come up for you as you try to sense or feel into your system. When you're ready, you can open your eyes and maybe jot down some of those words. You can also hang on to them, and as we look a little more deeply at the social field, see if they line up with some of what we're going to talk about. But it would also be interesting to share some of these in the chat. And not the system that you're thinking of, but the words that you would use to describe the system, or the images that came to you as you held this system in your awareness in this way. What are some of those descriptive words? Comfort and peace, possibility and potential, love. Oh, I want to be in your systems. Sounds really nice. Years of connection, giving, generosity, freedom and fun. Okay. Support and belonging. Taking a side, yeah. New opportunities and securities, danger, terror, joy, isolation, connection. Yes, the complexity of the system. The difference, the love between love, hope, striving, anxious, growing, wholeness, fear, tightness around the chest, unbalanced, longing, needing. You're really starting to get that kind of felt sense, of the personality, really, of the field, right? I've come to think of fields as having their own distinct personality. And fascia stuck, being pulled away, ungainly. Thank you. So as we move on in our thinking about both conceptualizing and working with the social field, so going between those two, it should be clear that by now that the social field looks at both the visible and the invisible aspects of our collective experience. And it's built on a model that you will know very well, which is the iceberg. And so you'll probably be very familiar with the idea that what we see is a very small portion of what's actually happening when we behave together as social beings in social systems. What isn't seen, but what creates what we see, are the structures, the ways that we organize ourselves and our worlds. And underneath that, what gives rise to those structures are our paradigms of thought. Our very thinking creates the structures that then shape our experience. And I think there isn't a better example of that than political paradigms. And what we like to work with, I think the piece that's often not addressed, not spoken about, and so not worked with, are the sources underneath the paradigms of thought. Here we have it as sources of inspiration, but it's really like, what gives rise to these paradigms of thought? What kind of awareness, and where is our awareness? What are we being aware of that shapes certain ways of thinking and being? And so the social field takes this model of the iceberg and puts it onto our social systems. And so you can see again at the top, practical results. In an organization, some of the results that might bring you into contact with them might be high turnover, employee absenteeism, conflict, poor like products or services. I mean, the flip side could be really innovative products and services and high employee satisfaction, but those would be the results that you see, and those are shaped, right? Those are created by the quality of the relating, the way that we relate to each other, our way of being within a social system, how we organize and have conversations and think. And what we're really trying to get at is the level underneath that, what we call the source conditions. And the source conditions are a sort of combination of what we call the inner condition. So what is each of our inner state of awareness, right? When I operate with you, am I just kind of chatting habitually? Am I expecting you to behave in a certain way, and so that's all I see? Or am I opening to something new, something different, right? To seeing you? That combined with, we might call it the quality of the soil, the quality of the container, so the holding of a particular system. So another way of thinking about the social field could be this. We can think of it as the entirety of the social system, but with an emphasis on the source conditions. It's really what we're trying to get at, the source that gives rise to our particular ways of interacting, conversing, and creating results. And so to come to know this third and kind of deepest level, if we want to come to know the social system at that level, right, we really need to be able to enter into it. Right? We talk about exploring it phenomenologically, right? Knowing it and being it. And again, trying to open to a wide variety of epistemologies, a wide way of knowing. And so we're going to move into another exercise. This one is individual as well, where we're really trying to access a different kind of knowing about the social systems that matter to us. Okay? We're going to try to access the social field. This is a journaling exercise. There are 8 questions in this journaling exercise. You don't need to write the questions down. Instead, the idea is that from a place of presence, you hear the question, put the pen to paper, and just allow whatever surfaces to come and to be expressed through your writing. So as we move into this, I would invite you again to just reconnect with that felt sense of the system that matters to you. If you want to change to a different system, that's fine too. Reconnect. Not so much with the words, but they may help reconnect with the feeling of being that system. We'll go with the first question, just under a minute for each question. Moving into metaphor, if this social field was a living being, what would it look like and feel like? This social field was a living being. What would it look like and feel like? Moving on to the next question. If that being could talk, what would it say to you now? So if that living being could talk, what would it say to you now? Moving on to question 3. If that being could develop, what would it aspire to morph into next? If the being could develop, what would it aspire to morph into next? Question number 4. What is the generative source that allows this social field to evolve and thrive? So what is the generative source that allows this field to evolve and thrive? Question 5. What limiting factors prevent it from developing further? What limiting factors prevent it from developing further? Moving on to question 6. Looking at the social field from a helicopter view, what is it really trying to do now? So helicopter up, looking at the field from that view. What is it really trying to do now? Next, question 7. What do you sense is this social field's highest future possibility? What do you sense is the highest future possibility for this social field? The final question, question 8. What is one key change that, if made, would help the social field move toward this possibility? What is one key change that, if made, would help the social field move toward this possibility? Okay, so if you can wrap up your responses to that last question, hold on to the responses, be working with them, sharing them shortly. But what we've been doing here is working with a different way of accessing what you know about your social field, which is really a great deal. And the idea is that by coming at an exploration of the field or the social system from a different angle, that it might surface insights for interventions, supporting interventions, new initiatives, new actions. And the last question really moves us toward this piece about, what do you do? What is the relationship between the individual? I'm an individual actor in a system, or I'm a change maker. What kind of agency is there to impact the social field, to change the social field? And I really love this quote by Meta Boel and Peter Senge in their work in schools and changing school systems. And they talk about school climate or school culture. They say that culture is shaped in the day by day and moment by moment ways of thinking and interacting. And for me, that just feels exactly right. And it also brings us to a place where we can have agency to affect wider change by our own being. And one of the tools, if you like, or capacities that's available to all of us always is our capacity to listen and to change the quality of our listening and the quality of our paying attention. And when we do that, when we change the quality of our listening and our paying attention, we change relationships. And when we change relationships, we change the social field. The social field, the social system is nothing but a set of relationships. And so there's really quite a bit of agency that we can exercise by attending to that particular skill. This is the place where inner work, right, the work we do on ourselves, intersects with systemic work or social change work. And so I'd like to share a framework for thinking about and understanding that quality of listening, quality of attention. And it's the work of Otto Scharmer, founder of Theory U, who talks about listening in terms of 4 levels, which I will share with you now. The first level, and the one that we are probably all far too familiar with, is downloading. Downloading is about walking through the world, projecting my own ideas about how things are out onto the world, and as a result, just confirming what I already know, right? Seeing what I expect to see. Nothing can change from habitual behavior. So if we want to have an impact on the system, if we want to shift a system, we've got to shift out of downloading, out of level 1 listening. Level 2 listening is really about open-minded listening, factual listening. So I'm on the lookout for new information, right? Particularly information that disconfirms what I already know, right? Now, as a leader, the capacity to do this, the kind of leadership quality connected to this, to be able to move to a place of not knowing and genuine curiosity and interest and openness to being wrong, is the quality of humility. And so that's a really core leadership capacity. Moving beyond that is the level of the open heart, empathic listening, and an effort to really deeply connect with the other person and understand their experience from their perspective. To almost take yourself out of the equation and really listen deeply from the eyes of the other person and to be moved by it. So the heart listening is really about using the heart as a tool for tuning into the world, for connecting, for paying attention and being touched by others and by what's happening, is often kind of an impetus for action, an impetus for change. If you talk to a lot of social innovators and get their story, the beginning of the story is that they had an experience that touched them on a heart level and couldn't kind of look away, had to act. So these three kinds of listening may be very familiar to you. The one that may be new is the level 4, open will, and this idea of generative listening. And generative listening is really interesting because there's a distinct shift here from, I'm really trying to listen for something, open mind, I'm really listening for what's new. Open heart, I'm really listening for your perspective. Generative listening is actually about no longer listening for anything in particular. It's an interesting experience of letting go, of listening for anything particular, but being very present and holding the space for something new to come in the interaction, not from me or from you, but from the interaction, a new insight, a new understanding, a new idea. And so this kind of listening, it's available to all of us, but it does need practice. And of course, we move through all of them, and different things pull us right back up into downloading. It would be a very difficult world to walk around trying to listen generatively all the time, but that's usually, it's the lower levels that are more challenging. And so what we'd like to do now, what I'd like to invite you to do, is to move into an experience of deep listening and of sense making of your own experience engaging with the social field from your social system, from a social field perspective. So we're going to invite you to move into a paired dialogue where each person will have the chance to share something that's very live for them in their system. If it is a decision you're trying to make, a tension you're holding, a wondering you have, or something that's kind of meaty enough to share, each person, just check my time, each person will have 6 minutes to speak and share. And if that feels long at the beginning, and if you have pauses, that's fine, but really stay with it. I think it needs its time to move from description to something a bit deeper. And the role of the partner is to hold the space and listen deeply. You might need to ask questions of clarification, but what we really ask is that you do everything you can not to move into giving advice. There's such a strong pull when someone says, I've got this thing I'm trying to figure out, I don't know what to do. It's a big blaring invitation to step into advice. Try to sidestep that. Just hold the space, listen, clarify, and practice. Pay attention to your own listening and your own awareness. Does it stay present? Does it float off? 6 people, if you could, 6 minutes, if you could have one of you time and then swap over, give the second person a turn to share. And
Hey, Google, turn on bedroom lights.
And then we'll come back and hear a bit from you about that experience. So we'll see you in about 12, 13 minutes.
Eva, there's a request to repeat the instructions.
Sure. Okay. Yes. Sorry. So each person will have a chance to speak of something that's live for you about your system, maybe something that came up in your journaling. The other person listens deeply. Really, that's the instruction. One person speaks for 6 minutes, the other listens deeply. Then you switch around. Okay? So really trying to move into those deeper levels of listening. Is there still a question?
Okay.
Wonderful. All right, hello everyone, and welcome back from your paired conversations. And as we move toward the end of our time together, it'd be wonderful just to hear a little bit about your experience in breakout rooms. And I'm aware that there are sort of two things happening at the same time. One is working on deep listening, so having the experience of listening deeply and being listened to deeply. And then the other was the content and maybe or maybe not getting insight into the social system that's important to you. And so really, I just want to open the floor to hear people's thoughts and comments, and that can be done either through the chat, but it's nice also to hear voices. And so if there's a reflection or an experience or insight that you'd like to share, please do just unmute. It'd be lovely to get 2 or 3 comments.
How is it that the other person always shares the thing that you need to hear?
Very nice. Yeah. I don't even see who said that, but
Laura.
Social field. Thank you.
Actually, if I can just add to that, I can talk, and because the irony of meeting in my, so I had someone was in my breakout room and disappeared, and I called for help, and the person that came into the room, Diane, was one of my first professors in the program of human relations, and ironically, I'm going through a shift, a personal shift for different reasons. But when I did my work on the open mind and open heart, and I've been doing this, I've been following you and Otto for the last 2 years, maybe more. I had asked myself to go back to where I wanted to be when I left the program. And so I can just, there's a wonderful feeling, wonderful opportunities. And I'm going to, and I was saying I want to go back to those feelings of being and transition that with the open mind, open heart. And I had a great day at work today, ironically. And then the camera turning on to Diane. So that's that, when the student is ready, the teacher appears in more ways than one. So I think this is quite symbolic of where I need to be, where I need to go. And wow, I can just say wow. So thank you for this.
Thank you so much. I see the hearts. Amazing. Dawn, I think, had you unmuted as well at the same time?
Who, me?
Oh. Dawn, I think at the same time, yeah, Dawn.
Me?
Yeah.
You're asking me what I did?
Yeah, well, if you wanted to, I wasn't sure if you unmuted to comment at the same time as Donna.
I'm happy to comment.
Great. I'm happy to hear it.
Who's commenting with me at the same time?
No, it just that 2 people unmuted at the same time. So just you.
Well,
yeah.
Mark was wonderful at holding space and listening. And if he had 2 more minutes, he could have gone further. So I'll go a little bit further in this, what I'm going to say. I started by saying I left Montreal and left everything in Montreal. All my possessions, except for a couple of photographs and pieces of art that I loved. And I moved to Victoria, BC to live in an intentional seniors community. That's about caring and sustainability as primary kind of objectives. There's 35 households, 52 people, multi-generational, not extremely diverse, but some diversity. And we made it, we moved in, we had the concept and got it together and worked through the group stuff and said we're going to do it. People actually put money on the table, which is like $30,000, $80,000, a big sum of money that you're gambling. And then we got the place, got the land, fought through the city with the city bylaws and the provincial bylaws around condos, and actually got mortgages from banks and built the place with the construction people. And then we moved in September last year. And that was a big rush with 35 households all hitting the place in one elevator and nobody knowing how to operate anything. And so this year we've been tired, exhausted, and beginning to focus on who we are and how we want to be together. And there is a pretty hard split with the people who want to come home from work and sit down in their backyard with their neighbor and have a glass of wine and maybe go to a barbecue and have a joint barbecue, or maybe just say goodnight after the glass of wine, versus the people who want to see co-housing communities more like family, with more love and caring and interbeing and oneness. And so right now, those people are engaged in self-designed, self-organized learning activities that include meditation of various kinds and a lot of individual and collective exercises. And they labeled me, and very clearly they labeled me. He's the PhD from Montreal. He knows about this stuff. Interestingly, they think Quebec knows about it, but they don't. So I thought they wanted me to talk to them, to tell them something. So I tried that and they creamed me. So I'm not able to tell them that here's the answer, go do this and this and you'll be fine. They want to learn themselves. So where I end, Eva, is with thinking about how do I develop a process or an intervention that would be helpful for collective wisdom, collective insight, not just individual, to bring a community toward oneness, toward interbeing. And one of the ideas I got is what Mark was talking about, which is social presence in theater. Did I get that right? Which could be a process of working at the right level with the right questions. Exactly. So Mark, I'm going to contact you and we'll talk more about this. Yeah. And I don't think we have a lot of good ways of doing that. How do you start with the field? Begin there. Like, how do you go to scale from the beginning rather than starting with the parts? That's my question right now.
I love it. Thank you, Don. And I think it's the question of the moment. It's what we know that working with the parts it's not effective and we don't have time. I think Meta Bole, who works with Peter Senge, says we don't have time to help each individual. Like, the issues that we're facing are urgent. So how can we work at the level of the field? I think there's the next webinar. That's great. So I'm very aware of the time. I want to respect all of your time and your evenings, and I'm so appreciative of you spending your time here. I know there's so much happening online, so many places to be, and I'm just really touched and grateful that so many of you came and joined and stayed with me. And what I would like to do is just, this is a little thank you with a drawing from my colleague Kelvie Bird. And then I would like to hand over to Marilyn for a few end words and closure, but just to express great gratitude and appreciation. Thank you so much for joining tonight.
Hi, everyone. It's Marilyn here with the Center for Human Relations and Community Studies. Thank you all so much for joining us, participating, and for sharing tonight. We hope you enjoyed today's presentation. On behalf of the center, I'd like to thank Eva. We're truly grateful to have her share her time and experience with us today. We're very excited, so as you see on the screen, to offer some in-person programming again, finally. Coming up in June, we have Dr. Yabom Gilpin-Jackson leading a half-day session on identity, belonging, and agency. In October, we have 2 transformational workshops that we will be offering. One is a 6-day workshop, the Human Interaction Laboratory, from October 16th to 21st, and Developing the Organizational and Personal Self, a 5-day workshop, October 16th to 20th, here in Montreal. So for more information and to register, just visit our website, concordia.ca/CHRCS, and click on the programs. I'll be sending a follow-up email with the slides and a link to the recording of tonight's presentation. And once again, thank you all so much for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.